Hi, everyone. I think this has begun. It is good to see all of you. Welcome to UJ Federation of New York's participation in the Week of Goodness that has been organized by families of hostages in Israel. We have been coming together to learn every morning now for a long time, but as part of this very special week called the Week of Goodness, that has been now advertised by all of the hostages' families, we are coming together in a very special way for an additional chance to learn together, to grow together, and to connect our hearts to those of our sisters and brothers in Israel whose family members are still in darkness. I want to read the description of the Week of Goodness, and then I'll frame the learning for today, and we'll learn together. Very grateful to UJA to be part of this global program to bring our hearts together. Week of Goodness, redeeming our hostages through good deeds. The families of all the hostages have been running to the ends of the earth to do everything possible to help save our loved ones. But we have yet to see the result we want. We have decided to dedicate 1 week from July 14th to July 21st to surge goodness into the world. Below are some of the efforts we will be undertaking. You can find all of this at weekofgoodness.com. Volunteering, studying, giving charity, praying, singing, and more. Join us or commit to your own benevolent actions. We are living in a fractured period, and our beloved hostages are in unimaginable darkness. Help us to repair and bring more light into the world. Join us. Share your own initiatives here. So my name is Menachem Creditor. It's my honor to serve as scholar in residence and rabbi for UJ Federation of New York. And together we are going to do some learning now, joining our hearts to those with other communities all over the world. Thank you so much to my colleagues at UJA for making this possible. I'll be sharing a screen, which I typically don't do, and we're going to learn together some Talmud in a conversation that I call the Rabbinic Imagination and the Revolution of Zionism. But all of it, throughout all of our learning today, all of it is dedicated to sending our hearts to the families of hostages, sending our hearts to the hostages themselves, praying that through our learning, through this surge of goodness, we can be part of bringing them home now. UJA sent a delegation of rabbis just 2 weeks after October 7th, where I received this necklace that now so many of us wear. And it says, Halev Shalanu Shavui Ba'aza, our hearts are captive in Gaza. And in English it says, bring them home now. We have been praying every day for the last 283 days since October 7th for one result, which is our family whole again. So we send our hearts and we dedicate our learning to all those still in darkness and to strengthen the families who are laboring so hard to bring their loved ones home. Bring them home now. Let's start together with a blessing for learning. We'll learn together for a little while, and then at 1 o'clock New York time, there will be a siyum, a completion of the learning that will be broadcast live from Israel. You can find all of that information on weekofgoodness.com. So let's take a breath. We're going to recite the blessing for learning. I'm going to hold my heart and this covenantal symbol that I've been wearing, connecting our hearts all together. If you don't know the words, it starts with Baruch and it ends with La'asok b'divrei Torah, to be busy with words of Torah. I invite you wherever you are to recite it with me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Now, here's a little bit of framing for the learning we're going to do. It's going to be mostly a Talmud text with two other texts at the very end. Some of you might not have learned Talmud directly before. It's an exciting thing to do. Some of you might be very familiar, but let me just frame a question and then a little bit of the history of the text, and then we'll get right to it. The question I'd love us to be thinking about is, how much would be enough? For us in this moment, in Jewish history, in our own hearts, how much would be enough? What do we need? The goals of Israel's response to October 7th are at least two. One of them is to defeat Hamas, but at least speaking personally, more importantly, most importantly, For the ancient rabbis, the most important mitzvah is pidyon shvuyim, is to return, redeem captives. Because through Jewish history, there have always, unfortunately, been moments where Jews have been taken hostage because the enemies, those who take human beings hostage, know that we will go to the ends of the earth to get our family back. There are ancient conversations in the Talmud about how much ransom is too much, but I don't want to think about it in those terms. I want to think about it in terms of a core emotional, spiritual question. How much would be enough? And I hope that as we consider what our needs are within the Jewish conversation, we recognize that that is also an insufficient framing if our goal truly one day, would be peace. How much would be enough? That every child on every side of every border would have what they need. That every family would be able to pursue its own heart, its own love, its children's welfare. That grandparents everywhere would be safe. That the leaders of all peoples would be oriented only towards the best interests of their people. It is clear that this isn't real yet, but that is a religious vision for the world. And so when I ask you how much would be enough, we're going to look at a text where that conversation is very alive and very complicated. Now, a word just about the Talmud. In Jewish history, there are a few different canons, a few different real categories of text. There's the biblical text, and that includes the 5 books. It includes the sections of the prophets. It includes the later writings, right? We call that the Tanakh. After that, we have rabbinic writings, and we're still actually doing that kind of rabbinic writing. That's where the Mishnah, which was edited around 400 CE, and the Talmud, which was edited around 600 CE, these are re-envisioning of community, but all of them come in the aftermath of displacement and destruction. One of the most complicated things for us to understand as Jewish learners, and if there are non-Jews learning with us, welcome. Really glad to have you here. One of the most important things for us to understand is that the religious imagination is often speaking in response to the way the world is, because it isn't the way the world should be. The ancient rabbis began their existence, not just their work, in the aftermath of the destruction of the Second Jerusalem Temple in 70 CE, where everything that we knew in biblical ritual and thinking and theology suddenly, maybe not so suddenly, but ended and changed. The priestly leadership of the people and the way of connecting to God through sacrifices, all of that is thrown into disarray and destroyed physically in 70 CE by the Romans. The rabbis, who didn't begin with those titles, but eventually emerged as what we now call rabbis, had to reimagine what the world could look like. What does a world without sacrifices look like? And it's especially important because we certainly traditionally believe, that the way we connect with God matters, and that praying to God results in a better future. It's not only for mindfulness and not only for bringing together community, but it's for the purpose of doing good in the world. In fact, the orientation of this week, the week of goodness, is absolutely connected to the ancient rabbinic impulse, which was to use spiritual truths and the Jewish legal system called halakha to bring the world to a better place, to figure out what is right, what we are called to do. And so our text is going to begin exactly in that pivotal moment. The text that we're going to look at from the Talmud, from the book of Gittin, page 65, A and B, for those who might be following along elsewhere. This text takes place during the Roman siege of Jerusalem. The Romans surrounded Jerusalem, and the Roman Empire was the global power. The Jews in Jerusalem were surrounded, and they weren't of one mind, because in moments of tribulation, even in moments of tribulation, we don't remember how much we need each other and how acting together is truly the right thing to do. With the Roman Empire surrounding Jerusalem, what hope did the residents of Jerusalem have to win this battle? There have been other moments of Jewish history where such a question has been asked, and the heroism of Jewish leaders have led us to really reflect what looks like the wise course of action now. There were at least two camps. I'll just use two. One of them were the Biryonim. There are a lot of words for them: gangs, ruffians, hooligans. Now, this is all described by the rabbis who end up telling the story, so that tells you something too. But the rabbis were led by the founder of what we now call Rabbinic Judaism, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was in Jerusalem, besieged Jerusalem, and so were the Biryonim, this other camp, extremists. And that's where our text begins. So you will see in a second the text that we're going to learn together as part of the Week of Goodness, remembering that we are orienting all of our learning, our hearts and our souls, towards bringing them home now. This is the rabbinic imagination and the revolution of Zionism, and I truly am grateful to UJA Federation of New York for making learning and doing and living an heroic response and unfathomable support for grassroots leaders and civilians. Countless citizens of Israel have benefited from the work that we have done on the ground, the tens of millions of dollars that we've already allocated towards the response to October 7th, and the hundreds of millions that we have raised that will continue to be deployed to support Israel's health on the ground. And all of our work here in New York is ongoing. I'm so privileged to work with my colleagues and with all the donors and lay leaders of UJA. So we are all united together in the hope that we will bring our hostages home. Here's the Talmud text. Abba Sikara, that's the name of somebody, was the leader of the Zealots. That's the translation we'll use for now, of the Biryonim, that other group, not the rabbis, but the Biryonim, the Zealots of Jerusalem. And he was also the son of the sister of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. What does that mean? It means that the rabbinic leader was the uncle of the leader of the Zealots. Sounds like a plot out of I don't know, some kind of story. Well, it is. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sent a message to his nephew, to Abba Sikara, and he said, come to me in secret. I'll make a few markings so you can see where we are. Come to me in secret. So Abba Sikara did come. He said, let's talk as family, uncle and nephew. I know we're part of these huge political divides, but let's just talk to each other. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, until when will you do this and kill everyone through starvation? Abba Sikara said to him, well, what can I do? For if I say something to them, they will kill me. And let's just for a second talk about this. The uncle, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, says to the nephew, Abba Sikara, listen, this isn't good. One of the tactics that the Zealots did was that they burned the storehouses of food in Jerusalem to make it just inevitable, this conflict. They have to fight because they can't last. So his uncle, Rabbi Yochanan, says, what are you doing? And his response is fascinating. His response is, I can't stop them. They're out of my control, which says all is lost. It's a terrible, terrible moment. Makes you wonder about who's really in charge sometimes. Well, the story continues. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, here I'm making an arrow so you can see where we are, show me a method so that I will be able to leave the city. And it is possible that through this, there will be some small salvation. You can see I underlined it there, underlined it in red again. And in Hebrew, actually it's Aramaic, up here, right above, Hatzala Porta. Let there be a small salvation. And that is a very complicated thing in Jewish history for us to think about. Is that enough? Is smuggling one survivor out enough? And again, we have been in moments of Jewish history where such a question has been asked. But for now, this is going to be the plan. So Abba Sikara begins plotting with him. Here's the paragraph that we're in. Abba Sikara said to him, this is what you should do. Here's how we'll smuggle you out. Pretend to be sick and have everyone come and ask about your welfare so that word will spread about your ailing condition, right? Leak that you're ill. Afterward, bring something putrid and place it near you so that the people will say that you've died and are decomposing. And then have your students enter to bring you to burial, and let no one else come in so that the zealots won't notice that you are still light, because as they know, a living person is lighter than a dead person. This all sounds very intricate, but this is what they do. They're going to pretend that he died and smuggle him outside of the city. And some of us know that in ancient tradition, burial never took place in the city. Even outside of the ancient city of Jerusalem today, you can see burial sites right outside because it was meant to keep death away from life. It was an ancient ritual which has modern corollaries. So they took him out. And when they took him out, they arrived at the entrance of the city. And on the inside, the guards, the Biryonim themselves, the zealots, wanted to pierce the coffin to make sure that he was dead. So Abba Sikara did his one heroic act where he stood up and said, "Don't do that. What will they say about how Jews treat each other? Piercing with spears. They will say they pierce even their teacher." Well, then they wanted to jostle around the casket. And Abba Sikara said, "No, they will say that they push even their teacher." So the guards opened the gate and he was taken out. Now, what you need to imagine is that there are parts of the text not included yet. We don't see the journey when they placed the casket down, how he got out, where he got his food, how he got where he got, but follow the logic of the Talmud, which is narrative logic, it's story logic. And then somehow he reached the Roman camp. Remember, the Romans are besieging Jerusalem. And a general named Vespasian, who we know one day will be the emperor, but right now he's the general. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who has escaped, finds an audience with General Vespasian. And remember our question. And it's an emotional question to ask. What would be enough? Friends, what would be enough? He's going to have an audience with a general who's attacking Jerusalem. What would be enough? Now, whatever you think your answer might be, you'll be surprised to see what comes next. Here's the text. I'll change the color just so we can say something has changed. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai reached there, the Roman camp, he said, "Greetings to you, the king." Greetings to you, the king. No, he's not a king yet. Watch what happens. Vespasian said to him, "You are liable for death for two things. One, I'm not a king, and yet you call me a king. Also, if I am a king, what took you so long?" There's a little bit of humor in here. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Well, you said you're not a king. In truth, you will be a king. I know you will, because there is a prophecy in the book of Isaiah, the prophetic book Yeshayahu, that calls the defeater, right? Lebanon shall fall by a mighty one, right? Adir. And an Adir means a king. And you ask me, what took me so long? Well, there are zealots among us who did not allow me to come. I had to work hard to find audience with you. So for some reason, Vespasian starts talking about his military tactics, and whether or not this is history, this is the rabbinic depiction of a pivotal moment of Jewish history, as if the rabbis knew what happened. And maybe this did happen. But more important than the historicity, the accuracy of the history here, is the message. What is being communicated? So watch what happens. And this is a little bit shocking. Amar le. The general said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, "If there's a barrel of honey and a snake," drakon, right? Isn't that funny to see the word dragon in the Greek means snake? All right, so there's a snake wrapped around the barrel of honey. Wouldn't they break the barrel in order to kill the snake? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was silent. Now take a second with me, friends. I'm just going to circle this text because it is so strange. Vespasian says, I'm just going to read it again. If there's a barrel of honey and a snake wrapped around it, wouldn't they break the barrel in order to kill the snake? If I asked you that question, what would you say? Of course not. You don't have to break the barrel to kill the snake. In fact, breaking the barrel won't kill the snake. But what is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's response? Silence. And obviously, what is he talking about? The emperor is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. There is an element of zealotry in Jerusalem. I have to destroy the whole city, right? And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is silent, silent. And you have to wonder, as I do, as any reader of the text, and any person who studies history, and anyone specifically who can think about a time of great distress, are you silent when you speak to the person in power about the needs of your community? No. And look what the Talmud follows up with. I'm going to change the color that I'm making notations with just because it's so striking what's here. I turned the text blue and made an indent to differentiate it, but it is right there in the text. Generations later are commenting on this immediate story. So Rav Yosef later read this following verse about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Some say it was Rabbi Akiva who applied this verse to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. What's the verse? I am the Lord who turns wise men backward and makes their knowledge foolish. What they are saying pretty explicitly here is that was the bad decision by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. How could you be silent when the general attacking Jerusalem asks you, shouldn't I break the barrel? Don't I need to do that to solve my problem? And the Talmud pulls no punches and says, as Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai should have said the following to Vespasian in response. In such a case, we take tongs like surgical tools, remove the snake and kill it. And in this way, we leave the barrel intact. Now, before we look at the rest of the text, I want to point out something very big here. The Talmud is telling us the story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai escaping from Jerusalem. And that's miraculous, of course, because without Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, there would be no rabbinic movement. There might not be Judaism. But the tactic that the story describes him taking with the general is questionable, even according to the Talmud's own standards. They're both telling us the story, how we survived, but wondering whether or not this was sufficient. Let me ask it differently. Is survival enough? The flag over my left shoulder. That's not just about survival. When we say Am Yisrael Chai, we are not saying survival is sufficient. It might be a bare minimum, but we've got work to do in this world, which is what the flag over my right shoulder reminds me, that human dignity for the LGBTQ family, and there are countless other ways that I could point to our work in the world, be it for the sake of human dignity for refugees, be it for the sake of technology being used for greater health for people, be it so that we could work like mad to make the world a better place for everyone. It's not only about survival. But in this moment, when I ask that leading question, what would be enough? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai used a phrase when he was trying to escape Jerusalem, Hatzala Purta. Let there be a small salvation. Well, here he is silent when perhaps he could have called for more. And look what happens immediately next in the text. In the meantime, as they were talking, a messenger arrived from Rome and said to the general, rise, for the emperor has died, and the noblemen of Rome plan to appoint you as the new emperor. At that time, Vespasian was wearing only one shoe. This story is going to get very strange for a second, as if it isn't strange already. But if any one of us has been involved in trying to build relationships with elected officials or other influential people, sometimes it comes down to the shoes you wear. Watch this. Vespasian was wearing one shoe. And when he tried to put on the other shoe, when this message came, it wouldn't come off his foot. It wouldn't go on his foot. He couldn't put his shoes on. He tried to remove the other shoe that he was already wearing, but it wouldn't come off. And he said, what is this? Why suddenly can I not put on my shoe? Remember, he just got named emperor, and this is the story. It makes you wonder whether or not this really happened. But it is fantastical, and again, the message is, what are we being told? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai manages to help him put on his shoes. Watch this. Be not distressed or troubled, for good tidings have reached you. As it is written, good tidings make the bone fat, and your feet have grown fatter out of joy and satisfaction. That's why you can't put your shoes on, O emperor-elect. Vespasian said to him, "What's the remedy? Help! You're so wise. Tell me what to do." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, "Have someone with whom you are displeased come and pass before you. Someone you don't like, let them walk in front of you. Why? Because a broken spirit dries the bones." The emperor-elect, and it's not really a title, Vespasian does this, and the shoe went more easily on his foot. And Vespasian said to him, "You're so wise. Why didn't you come to see me until now? We could have worked things out. Maybe we could have avoided the siege." And Ben Zakkai said, "I already told you. There are people trying to block me from meeting with you." And Vespasian said to him, "I also told you what I had to say. If you're this smart, you could have been that smart too." And this is one of the most interesting parts of the Talmud text, which is the Roman general who's about to become emperor says to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, "You're smarter than this. You could have achieved more than this. Why didn't you find a way? You managed now. You could have managed before, and maybe it didn't have to get this bad." Some deep learning in there for us. The text continues. Remember that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, of all the things that he could have done, was suddenly able to fix the problem of the general that he could put on his shoes. He's very wise. So Vespasian then said to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, this is one of the most famous sections, by the way, of the entire Talmud. "I will be going to Rome to accept my new position, and I will send someone else in my place who's going to continue besieging Jerusalem and waging war against it. But before I leave," this is such a fateful question, "ask something of me that I can give you. Just ask me for something. I'm so grateful to you, Rabbi Yochanan," says the general. "Ask me for something." And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, this is a phrase that echoes through Jewish history, "Tein li Yavne v'chachmea." Give me Yavne and its sages. Yavne becomes the seat of Rabbinic Judaism in the diaspora, by the way. "And spare the dynasty of Rabban Gamliel, and do not kill them as if they were rebels. And lastly, give me doctors to heal Rabbi Tzadok. Give me Yavne." He's speaking in a way that assumes that Jerusalem is lost. And I want you to hear with me, and I can't help but read this with some real pain in my voice. Rav Yosef read the following verse about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and some say it was Rabbi Akiva who applied the verse to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. We read this one before. "I am the Lord who turns wise men backwards and makes their knowledge foolish." What should Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai have said? He should have said to him to leave the Jews alone. Should have said, "Leave the Jews alone." Now, twice again, friends, we see moments where Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who is a hero in rabbinic imagination, either remains silent when he could have spoken, and the Gemara calls him out, the Talmud calls him out for not speaking up. When a barrel of honey is surrounded by a snake, don't you need to destroy the barrel to kill the snake? Of course not. Say something. He didn't. And in this case, the general who's going to become emperor says, "Ask me for something." And he says, "Give me Yavne. Give me," I don't want to say it like this, but our home is lost, so give me a little village somewhere else. We'll start again. Feels like, if you know Fiddler on the Roof, an Anatevka moment, or in Sephardic history, Baghdad. Over and over in Jewish history, we're exiled. We're wandering. And when someone offers us crumbs, we say yes. But is that always enough? I remember there's a musical that my family cherishes a lot. My father and my uncle gave to their father, my beloved Saba of blessed memory, Henry Creditor. May his memory be blessed. They gave him a record of this musical called The Rothschilds. And I remember listening to it all the time. It tells a story about how the Rothschild family, which began in the Frankfurt ghetto, um, the Rothschild family with Meyer, who's the ends up becoming the beginner, the founder of this new banking empire, the Rothschilds. He he dreams of something more, and his wife says, "We have enough. We have enough. Just one room. That's all I need." And and he says, "No, that's not good enough." And she ends up singing to him, "If one room's not good enough for you, I'll do the best I can with two." It's a very sweet moment. But that tension between what's enough, that's not enough. You deserve more than that. Human dignity includes more than that. That trickles down to their children who see the fiery model of their father, and their mother says to them, so this is the second generation, "We have enough. We have enough. What more do you want? What more do you need?" And the sons who have grown up in the Frankfurt ghetto, who have seen that more is possible, have a taste of what dignity actually might look like. They sing to their mother, "We want everything, everything, everything other men aspire to. What another's entitled to, we're entitled to too." So again, the question is, what's enough? What would be enough, my friends? The Talmud itself, which lionizes Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, here calls out the insufficiency of his response to the question he is asked. The general says, "What do you want?" And he says, "Give me Yavne. I'll take the crumbs because I can't have everything. I can't keep my home." And the Talmud might be a little bit charitable to him next, but the question and the critique in the Talmud shouldn't escape our notice. The Talmud says, why didn't Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai make the request, "Leave the Jews alone"? Because he believed that Vespasian might not do that much for him, and there would not even be in Aramaic, Hatzalah Purta, a small salvation. So I want to make a comment here that is outside of the Talmud text. And it has to do with the reality of Israel, the third Jewish commonwealth, a dream of our people since ancient times. 2,000 years of exile did not stop our heartbeat, our yearning for Zion. Now, we made life everywhere we were, and we continue to make life where we are. As troubled as it is with anti-Semitism growing all over the world, it is also true that there has never been a better time to be a Jew. But there is one thing that changed that, which is the religious posture before Zionism began of hoping for Zion, a return to home, the end of breadcrumbs for Jews, thinking that that would be enough. The posture was, God will bring us back. I remember singing as a child this beautiful song. It's based on Maimonides' formulation of faith. When something bad would happen in the Jewish world, we would gather together and inevitably sing something like, "Ani ma'amin," I believe with full faith. "Be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, ani ma'amin." I believe in the coming of the Messiah. And then the second part of the song was, of course, the most emotional part, but we're going to respond to it in a second. The second half of the song goes, "Ve'af al pi she'yitmamea im kol zeh achake lo." And though the Messiah may tarry, I will wait for him every day. What was the Jewish posture historically toward the idea of going home, of having what we really need, what we deserve, home, and all it represents? The religious posture was to wait. The beginnings of Zionism, in all of its forms, cultural Zionism, political Zionism, was the conviction by mostly anti-religious people that waiting for God to bring us home was insufficient because we deserve everything other people aspire to. It is not our natural condition to be exiled from our home, to ask for breadcrumbs and to be satisfied by that. Now, of course, that's a political response to anti-Semitism, but it is a yearning that has been true since the book of Genesis for home, for family, for safety, for a way of connecting with the divine and being granted space. And I say being granted, but it should be claiming the space to do the good that we are called to do in the world, because after all, the call to the first Jews, to Abraham and to Sarah in the book of Genesis, was Veheye bracha, be a blessing. I've said, not with humor, but with pain, if they, whoever I mean by they, in these moments of tribulation, there are a bunch of they. There are. If they would only leave us alone, we would just be such helpers to the world. We'd be able to focus on alleviating food insecurity and supporting those who have survived domestic violence and taking care of refugees and working on saving our planet. We would be agents of peace with even more energy if we would just be given the space. And so, this text that we have been looking at in a moment of deep Jewish pain, especially as we're during the summer months coming up to the period of time that leads to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, that's in a month and a bit, where we commemorate the destructions of the temple. The birth of the state of Israel was us claiming self-determination and dignity. The way to understand anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are twin attacks on Jewish dignity, the right to be and the right to be home. And Zionism is the Jewish expression of, I have a place on this earth. I deserve full dignity, just like everyone does. And any attack on that is an attack on Jewish dignity, on the right of Jews to be alive. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai believed that Hatzala Purta, a small salvation, was the best he could do. And the Talmud criticizes him for it. I don't want to attack him. I didn't have to live his experience. I don't want to attack anybody. All I know is my own life. But it is really important for us to understand that the message of this text and what we are calling for as part of this week of goodness is the right to dignity. Taking my grandparents and my babies and my children and my neighbors and my sisters hostage for 283 days is an attack on Jewish dignity. We want them home. This is a week of goodness. All we want is the freedom to do good. That is what self-determination for any people should represent. And why should Jews be considered less than any other people? We want the right to do good, to be free, to love, to help, to be seen as fully human. A week of goodness, in the name of our hostages, tells you what we aspire to. How are we responding to this devastating attack on our lives? We are responding with a week of goodness, singing last night at Tachana Rishonah, the first station in Jerusalem, learning all around the world today, doing mitzvot, good deeds, tomorrow and the day after, and of course, every day after that. We are part of a people who holds its head up high and dreams of doing good for the world. That's what the state of Israel represents to me. Zionism is the right of the Jewish people to self-determination so that we can fulfill our mandate to be a blessing in the world. Yes, defensible boundaries are the only way it seems we can accomplish that. But the purpose of it all is to be a blessing. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai knew that, of course. Vespasian, through the rabbinic imagination, knows that too. And the founders of Zionism absolutely understood that to its core. A safe place so that we can be beautiful, so that we can dance like those beautiful young people at the Nova Festival who are dancing again. Just the right to wake up in the sunlight and dance with abandon, to see the possibilities of humanity. Now, if you think that this all sounds beautiful yet unachievable, I will remind you that the Talmud wasn't the last word in Jewish text. Thank God we continue to build and dream and learn and live and love. We make weeks of goodness when there's nothing dark we're fighting against. We take care of the most vulnerable people in all of society, not just Jews. We take care of everybody because that's what it is to be a Jew. It's to be a helper. It's to be partners with God in continuing the work of creation. Our ancestors all knew that. But until the state of Israel was founded, we were lacking in the belief that we could achieve that we could achieve everything, that our children could know that they are safe and should be proud. Wearing a kippah in public really only began in the United States after the Six-Day War, when Jewish strength, turning back those who would hurt us, was achieved in global dimensions. So when I put the rest of this text on the page, I hope you know that all of this was written before the possibilities of being helpers on a global level. The text you're about to look at, that we're going to look at right now, is from my favorite book, The Nefesh HaChaim, a book written by Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, spoken on his deathbed to his son and published in 1824. This text is a really beautiful one. He says, if you feel hopeless, this is what you must learn. No person should ever think, what am I? And what strength do I have through my worthless deeds to influence anything? I know the world can feel like that sometimes. You must understand, know, and fix in your soul that no element of a human being's deeds, speech, and thoughts can be lost. How great is human action? Every action you take is so important and has an impact. Every action ascends according to its nature, impacting even the highest heights in the hidden and revealed ways. This is a mystical way of saying, do something good, it will reverberate through heaven and impact the world even more than you realize. In truth, one who deeply understands this teaching will feel their heart tremble with great shaking, as they also accept the destructive impact even light sins can have. No action is neutral, said Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. No action is neutral. So I'm asking you, as we begin to come to a close of our special session with UJA as part of a week of goodness, I ask you, what would be enough? And my answer for you, friends, for me at least, and maybe for you, is if I have the capacity to help, helping is enough. Whatever I can do, that is the bare minimum of what I am called to do. And the good we can do when we are united as a community, the good we can do when we make friends of neighbors, when we treat people like neighbors and see them as friends, when we demand of the world that we be seen as nothing less than that. That's enough, maybe. Maybe. But you know, it would be enough right now in this one moment. We had all of our family whole. If those who have died while being held hostage could be buried properly. If those who have been freed, not released, freed, were able to engage in their own health. And if those who are still alive in captivity were brought home, just for this second, that would be enough. Please God, one day, may we see ourselves with all the beauty that we deserve. One day the world might even do that, but let's remember to do that ourselves. Share with you one more text, and then we'll end our learning for right now. Then the Siyum, the completion of the learning, will be broadcast live from Jerusalem in about 15 minutes at 1 o'clock New York time. If you wonder if this is talking to you, if you wonder, not only was Reb Chaim talking about the human capacity to do good in these cosmic ways, or Rabbi Yochanan's model of historic heroism, is this really about you? One more text. Because Queen Esther was wondering about that too. She said, I don't know if I can do it. I just don't know. And Mordechai said to her, Al tadmi benafshech, don't imagine to yourself that of all the Jews, you will escape with your life by being in the king's palace. If you think that this is an issue in the south of Israel or on specific college campuses, no, no, no. We're all connected and the world will remind us. But also remember this positive way of saying it. On the contrary, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come from another quarter. We will find a way, while you and your father's house, God forbid, would perish. But who knows? Umi yodea im la'et kazot higat lamalchut. Who knows if this is the exact reason that you've achieved the position that you have? So what position do you have, friends? No one's actions are neutral. We know that. Someone says to you, what do you need? What's your answer? What's your answer on behalf of our people? What would be enough? And be good, be kind as you answer. Remember, we are called to that model. I will share in closing the teaching of one spectacular human being that I was blessed to spend some time with just 2 weeks ago. Her name is Aviva Siegel. She was held hostage by Hamas for 54 days. She was released. She was freed. But her husband, Keith, is still a hostage. And when asked in front of cameras and a big audience, does anyone else have anything to say? After she had told her story, Aviva got up to the microphone and she said, I am going to be a good person. I am going to be a good person. And so, friends, let that be the lesson that we take from this. As we pray that our family be whole again, as we pray for the release of every hostage, as we support the families of all the hostages, family members of Jewish hostages, family members of Muslim hostages, because there are, family members of Christian hostages, because there are. As we pray for that, as we reel from all of the reality that we continue to endure 283 days after October 7th, let us hear the words of Aviva Siegel in our ears. We are going to be good people. That would be enough. Bless you all, friends. Bless you all. Let's sing Hatikva, and we'll end this session. And then we'll join together for the Siyum, the completion ceremony in Jerusalem. Kol hod balevav penima nefesh Yehudi homia ulefatei mizrach kadima ayin letzion Sophia. Od lo avda tikvatenu, hatikva bat shnot alpayim, liot am chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Liot am chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim. Am Yisrael Chai. Bring them home now. Thank you, friends, for joining us. See you at 1 o'clock for the Siyum. Take care.